The morning sun shone brightly over Westwood Academy, casting golden rays on the polished black pavement where luxury cars lined up to drop off students. The sight was an unspoken competition among parents. Who had the latest model, the most expensive car, or the flashiest entrance? Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royces, and sleek Teslas dominated the parking lot, their tinted windows shielding their privileged passengers from the common world outside. Chauffeurs in crisp black suits held open doors, bowing slightly as their young masters emerged. Boys and girls dressed in designer uniforms stepped out with nonchalant ease, knowing their worth was measured not just by grades, but by status, wealth, and exclusivity. And then, cutting through the sleek opulence, came a rusty bicycle. The moment the girl on the bike entered the school's gates, heads turned. Conversations stopped. The soft hum of expensive car engines quieted as students watched in a mixture of disbelief, curiosity, and amusement. The bicycle itself wasn't broken, but it was clearly old. The white paint was chipped in several places, revealing the silver metal underneath. The tires were worn but still functional. The basket attached to the front carried only a water bottle and a neatly packed lunch bag. No designer bags, no expensive coffee, no personal assistants hovering nearby. The rider was Sophie Lancaster, a quiet but confident 16-year-old with wavy brown hair pulled into a ponytail, piercing green eyes, and a simple yet neatly pressed uniform. Unlike her classmates, she didn't wear expensive jewelry or branded accessories. Her uniform, while tidy, was unembellished, her sneakers slightly scuffed but clean. Sophie dismounted her bike near the security post, calmly setting it against the rack and locking it in place. She adjusted her backpack before stepping forward, completely unbothered by the stares and whispers around her. Near the main entrance, Madison Carter, the queen bee of Westwood Academy, stood surrounded by her usual entourage. Madison was the daughter of a real estate tycoon, and she made sure everyone knew it. With flawless golden blonde hair, perfectly manicured nails, and a uniform tailored to perfection, she exuded superiority in every way. She let out a scoff loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Oh, my God, is she serious right now?" Madison's voice dripped with amusement and disgust as she gestured dramatically towards Sophie. Her best friend, Tiffany Summers, covered her mouth in mock shock. Wait, is that a bicycle?" She turned to Jason, one of the richest boys in school, her eyes wide. "Jason, tell me I'm hallucinating." Jason chuckled, adjusting his expensive Rolex. "No, Tiff, that's definitely a bicycle." A chorus of laughter erupted from the group as students turned their attention towards Sophie, their eyes filled with judgment and amusement. Did she lose her Uber account or something? Madison continued, tilting her head. Or did she not get the memo that this isn't a public school? I bet she found that thing in a junkyard. Another girl, Bianca, snickered. Sophie could hear every word. But instead of reacting, she simply kept walking toward the school entrance, her posture straight, her steps unhurried. She had been through this before. Unfortunately, Madison wasn't one to let things go. "Hey, bicycle girl," Madison called out, making sure everyone heard. Sophie stopped, exhaling softly. The crowd around them grew silent, eager to see what would happen next. Madison took a step forward, a smirk playing on her lips. "Did your family's car break down? Or is that seriously the only thing you can afford?" Another round of snickers and laughter. Sophie turned around slowly, her green eyes meeting Madison's sharp blue ones. She could see the challenge, the expectation in Madison's gaze. She wanted a reaction. Instead, Sophie simply shrugged, adjusting the strap on her backpack. "At least I have my own ride," she replied calmly. "Some of you still rely on your parents to take you places." A ripple of surprised murmurs ran through the crowd. Madison's smirk faltered. Jason let out a low whistle, nudging his friend. "Damn, she's got a point." Tiffany recovered quickly. "Yeah, but at least our rides don't look like they belong in a museum." Laughter followed, but Madison was still reeling from Sophie's unexpected comeback. For a moment, their eyes locked. Sophie wasn't smiling or flustered. She simply looked bored, as if Madison's insults were a waste of her time. That, more than anything, irritated Madison. But before she could fire back, the school bell rang. Sophie turned without another word and walked away, leaving Madison standing there, fuming as whispers filled the air. "Who is she, anyway?" one girl muttered. "No idea, but she's got guts." Westwood Academy wasn't just a school. It was an empire for the elite. Everything about it was state-of-the-art. Marble hallways that gleamed under the golden chandeliers. A private cafe that served gourmet food and custom lattes. A sprawling library with first-edition books. An Olympic-sized pool and a high-tech gym. It was a place where money equaled power and status determined everything. Sophie, however, moved through the halls like a ghost. She didn't bother seeking approval or trying to fit in. While other students flaunted their custom-tailored blazers and designer accessories, she walked with a quiet confidence. One that came from knowing exactly who she was, even if no one else did. What the students didn't know was that Sophie Lancaster wasn't just any girl. She was the only daughter of Richard Lancaster, one of the richest billionaires in the country. A man whose net worth made most of the parents at Westwood look like mere amateurs in the world of wealth. But no one at school knew that, and that was exactly how Sophie wanted it. At lunch, Sophie sat at the farthest table, alone by choice. She didn't mind the isolation. She preferred it, really. It meant no one to impress, no expectations, no fake friendships. But today, Madison wasn't done with her. With her usual entourage, Madison strode toward Sophie's table with the air of a queen ready to put a lowly peasant in their place. She placed her tray of organic, chef-prepared food down and sat across from Sophie without an invitation. "So, bicycle girl," she began, twirling her golden hair around one manicured finger. "I've been thinking, why don't you just transfer? You clearly don't belong here." Tiffany chimed in. "Like, this isn't exactly a scholarship school, you know?" Sophie took a sip of her water, unbothered. "That's interesting, considering I'm here, sitting at the same table as you." Madison's smile tightened. "Yeah, but let's be real. You don't fit in." Sophie leaned back in her chair. "If fitting in means acting like you, then yeah, no thanks." Tiffany gasped. Jason, who had been watching silently, let out another amused chuckle. "Damn, Madison. She got you again." Madison's eyes flashed with frustration. "Oh, I get it," she said, leaning forward, her voice mockingly sweet. "You must be one of those poor kids who got in through a favor, right? Maybe your parents clean houses, and someone felt bad for you." Sophie's jaw tightened slightly, but she didn't break eye contact. "Do you really think money makes someone better than others?" she asked, tilting her head. Madison smirked. "At Westwood? Absolutely." Sophie exhaled slowly, taking one last sip of her water before standing up calmly. "Well, Madison," she said smoothly, "I guess you'll be in for a huge surprise soon enough." She picked up her tray and walked away, leaving Madison with a confused frown. Jason turned to Madison, grinning. "I don't know what it is, but something tells me she's not who you think she is." Little did they know, the girl they just humiliated, the one they assumed was poor, was wealthier than all of them combined. And very soon they were going to find out the truth. The halls of Westwood Academy buzzed with the usual chatter of privileged teens, discussing their weekend trips to Paris, the latest designer trends, and who had the newest iPhone. But today, a different kind of discussion was making the rounds. The new girl, the one who rode a bicycle to school, had stood up to Madison Carter. And not just once, but twice. "She didn't even flinch," a student murmured to his friend near the lockers. "It was like she wasn't even intimidated by Madison." "Yeah," another girl whispered. "Who is she? I mean, a girl like that shouldn't even be here, right?" Meanwhile, Madison Carter was fuming. She had never been talked back to like that. At Westwood, she ruled and everyone knew it. Yet, this nobody, this bicycle-riding peasant, had the audacity to challenge her not once, but twice in the same day. That wouldn't stand. She sat at her usual table in the cafeteria with Tiffany, Bianca, and Jason. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped rhythmically against her tray as she glared across the room at Sophie, who sat alone, eating her simple packed lunch without a care in the world. She's obviously a nobody, Madison scoffed. No money, no status, no reason to even be in this school. Jason smirked. You sure about that? She doesn't act like someone desperate to fit in. Madison shot him a glare. Jason, stop defending her. I'm just saying, Jason shrugged, leaning back in his chair. Most people you humiliate end up crying or running away. She didn't. Tiffany nodded. Yeah, and honestly, that's weird. Why isn't she afraid of you? Madison scoffed. Because she's delusional. She probably thinks if she plays tough, we'll magically accept her. But a small seed of doubt had been planted in Madison's mind. Something about Sophie Lancaster didn't add up. Later that day, as Sophie was unlocking her bicycle, she felt someone approaching. Turning around, she wasn't surprised to see Jason leaning casually against a nearby pillar, watching her with amusement. You've got some guts, you know that? He said, shoving his hands into the pockets of his expensive jeans. Sophie sighed. Are we seriously doing this again? Jason laughed. Relax. I'm not here to insult you. I'm actually impressed. Sophie narrowed her eyes. By what? Jason shrugged. By you. You don't care what people think. That's rare at Westwood. Sophie adjusted her backpack. Maybe that's because I don't think Westwood's opinion of me is worth anything. Jason smirked. Exactly my point. There was a brief pause before he spoke again. Look, Madison's not going to drop this. You embarrassed her twice. She'll make your life miserable if you don't at least play along a little. Sophie exhaled. Jason, I really don't care. Right? Jason nodded. So, prove it. Sophie frowned. What? Jason grinned. Come to Madison's party this weekend. Let's see how unbothered you really are. Sophie blinked. Wait. She invited me? Jason laughed. Not exactly, but trust me, the look on her face when you show up? Worth it. Sophie hesitated for a moment. The idea of deliberately walking into the lion's den didn't sound appealing. Then again, maybe it was time to shake things up. Saturday night, Madison Carter's mansion was, as expected, a ridiculously large estate with a driveway longer than some highways. Luxury cars lined the entrance, and the sound of expensive heels clicking against marble floors filled the air. Inside, the party was in full swing. Chandeliers cast a golden glow over the ballroom-turned-dance floor, and waiters in black vests carried trays of imported hors d'oeuvres and sparkling drinks. Madison had spared no expense, making sure this was the event of the year. Then, the music slightly dipped, and a few heads turned toward the entrance. Because walking through the grand doorway was Sophie Lancaster, and she wasn't wearing her usual simple uniform. Instead, she was dressed in a sleek black dress, form-fitting yet elegant, paired with black heels that gave her an extra inch of height. Her brown hair was down in soft waves, and she carried herself with an effortless grace that made people wonder, wait, who is she again? Jason, who had been watching from the stairs, let out a low whistle. Damn, she cleans up nice. Tiffany, standing next to Madison, nearly choked on her champagne. What the hell? Madison's jaw tightened. What is she doing here? Bianca whispered. She looks rich. No, she doesn't, Madison snapped. She's just faking it. But for the first time, a small doubt crept into Madison's mind. Something about Sophie didn't fit the picture Madison had painted of her. And the worst part? Everyone else was noticing it too. Sophie didn't hesitate as she walked past the crowd of staring students. She wasn't here to blend in. She was here to remind them that she didn't need their approval. Jason, already holding a drink, walked over with a grin. Well, look who finally decided to play the game. Sophie raised an eyebrow. I'm not playing. I'm just observing. Jason smirked. Yeah? And what do you think so far? Sophie glanced around the excessive luxury, the people flaunting their wealth as if it meant something. I think it's funny. Jason tilted his head. Funny. Sophie looked him in the eye. That you all think this is normal. Jason didn't have a comeback. Before their conversation could continue, Madison stormed up to them. Sophie, she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. I didn't realize you were invited. Sophie turned slowly, meeting her eyes with an unreadable expression. Oh, I wasn't, she said calmly. But Jason insisted. Madison shot Jason a glare, but he just grinned. So, bicycle girl, Madison continued, voice dripping with venom. Tell me, where exactly did you get that dress? A thrift store. Sophie smirked. No, she said. It was a gift from a friend. Madison scoffed. Right? And I bet you rode your little bicycle here. Huh? Jason was watching the exchange with amusement, but what happened next shocked him, and everyone else. Because at that exact moment, Sophie's chauffeur stepped into the room. A tall, well-dressed man in a black suit approached and whispered something into Sophie's ear. She nodded. Then, without breaking eye contact with Madison, she said, Actually, I didn't ride my bicycle today. Madison crossed her arms. Oh? Then how did you get here? Sophie smiled. A second later, a butler walked into the room and handed Madison an envelope. Confused, she opened it. Inside was a Westwood Academy donation receipt, signed by Richard Lancaster, the billionaire. Madison's entire body stiffened as realization hit her. The girl she had been humiliating for riding a bicycle was the daughter of one of the richest men in the country. Sophie leaned in, her voice calm and steady. See you on Monday, Madison. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Madison standing there, speechless. The air in Madison Carter's grand ballroom had turned stale with shock. Sophie Lancaster, the girl Madison had mocked, humiliated, and dismissed as poor, was the daughter of Richard Lancaster, one of the wealthiest billionaires in the country. Madison's hands trembled as she held the donation receipt, the elegant signature of Richard Lancaster staring back at her like a cruel joke. The girl she had spent days tearing down had more money than all of them combined. Gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd. No way. Sophie is a Lancaster? How did no one know? Madison clenched her fists. This couldn't be real. This was supposed to be her night. This was supposed to be the night Sophie learned her place. Not the night Madison lost control of hers. But as she turned to face the room, all she saw were eyes on Sophie. And Sophie? She wasn't even looking back. With her head held high, she walked toward the grand entrance, her black heels clicking against the marble floor. Her presence demanded attention without asking for it. Jason, who had been watching everything unfold, let out a low whistle. Well, he murmured to himself, that just changed the game. By the time Monday arrived, Westwood Academy was in chaos. Every student, teacher, and even some of the staff had heard the legendary story of what happened at Madison Carter's party. Sophie Lancaster was a billionaire's daughter, and suddenly, the entire school dynamic was shifting. People who had ignored her before were suddenly desperate to be her friend. Students who had laughed at her bicycle were now tripping over themselves to hold the door open for her. And Madison? She hadn't been seen all morning. Sophie walked into school like she always did, without fanfare, without drama. But the second she entered the building, every head turned. A group of rich girls who had once whispered about her clothes rushed to her side. Sophie, we should totally go shopping together sometime. One of them giggled. Oh my God, yes. Another chimed in. We could do a spa day. Sophie didn't even stop walking. No thanks. The girls stared after her in stunned silence. Jason, who had been leaning against his locker watching the scene unfold, grinned. Oh, this is going to be fun. Meanwhile, Madison Carter was having the worst day of her life. She sat hidden in the girls' restroom, clutching her phone as the messages poured in. Tiffany. OMG. Everyone's turning on you. They think you're jealous of Sophie now. Bianca. Girl. Jason literally said, Sophie's cooler than Madison. Like out loud. In front of people. Madison's blood boiled. How had things flipped so quickly? She was Madison Carter. She ruled the school. But now, she was a joke. She had spent so much time humiliating Sophie, thinking she was a nobody, that she had made herself look like a fool instead. It wasn't fair. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Her jaw tightened as she stood up, smoothing her skirt. Fine. If Sophie wanted a war, she'd get one. By lunchtime, Madison had recovered just enough to try and take back control. She stormed up to Sophie's lunch table, ignoring the hushed whispers and curious stares from the other students. Sophie, as always, sat calmly, eating her packed lunch with zero concern. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" Madison snapped. Sophie didn't even look up. "I don't think about you at all." A ripple of gasps ran through the cafeteria. Jason, sitting nearby, actually choked on his drink. "Oh, damn." Madison's eyes burned with frustration. "You knew, didn't you?" she accused. "You knew who you were this whole time, and you let me." "Let you what?" Sophie finally looked up, tilting her head. "Show everyone who you really are?" Madison's jaw tightened. Sophie continued, her voice calm but firm. "You're mad because you thought you were humiliating me," she said. "But all you did was prove that you judge people based on money. You laughed at my bicycle because you thought I was poor." Sophie's eyes pierced through Madison's soul. "But what if I actually was? Would that make me any less of a person?" The cafeteria was dead silent. Madison's mouth opened, then closed, because she had no answer. Sophie stood up, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. "For the record," she said, giving Madison one last look, "I rode my bicycle to school because I like to." And with that, she walked away, leaving Madison standing there, humiliated in front of the entire school. The days that followed were unlike anything Westwood Academy had ever seen. Sophie remained the same, but the way people treated her wasn't. Some students tried desperately to befriend her, but she had no interest in fake friendships. Jason, however, he kept hanging around. "You know," he said one afternoon, watching Sophie unlock her bicycle, "I gotta admit, I kind of respect you." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "Oh," Jason smirked. "Yeah, you could have flaunted your wealth, but you didn't. You could have destroyed Madison, but you didn't." He leaned against the fence. "That takes serious confidence." Sophie smiled. "Maybe I just don't see the point of impressing people who don't matter." Jason laughed. "Damn, I think I'm starting to like you." She rolled her eyes but grinned as she pedaled away. For the first time in Westwood Academy's history, things were changing. And at the center of it all was a girl on a bicycle.